Yeah, it's so fitting. Home for the Harvest is what we called it, and it truly was
Became
and
that.
definitely is still a
Mhm.
home for that. I mean, all these things that we're talking about, these ministries that we did, women's and kids, and other
Christmas,
and
special
yeah,
events.
special events that we did. I mean, it definitely is a home for the harvest that God is bringing in.
So in this last part of our church's journey, or most recent, I should say, what I see God doing is not just helping us prepare for something, but actually do it. You know, our goal, our call, that prophecy all the way back then about a family church, our whole goal, and I forgot where it came from, maybe Pastor Jordan or somebody, but the idea of being a multi-generational church, from the little babies coming into daycare to those people who've lived their life, gotten all the way through adulthood, grown old, and move on to heaven. Our church needs to care for every level.
Yes, absolutely.
And I feel like this is a stage where, for you and me, we can move from actively sort of directing the church to, at most, being sort of a spiritual grandparent. And we can sit back and look and rejoice and celebrate, but we don't have to run the ship anymore. These younger leaders that we've had, who aren't so young anymore, are capable, gifted, strengthened by God, and they're taking over. And it's not just trying, they're doing it. And even for the last number of a couple of years and more, so much of what we see happening at church is not me or you, but God's the one that's doing it, and their hands are ready and able. So this phase is us handing it off.
Yeah.
Well, we finally got the new church built, the new sanctuary, got our chairs in there, got everything all set up, sound system, technical things. It was really involved. People, all kinds of people, from the contractors to the volunteers, did a great job, and we moved in. And it wasn't very long, and that new sanctuary was full. I remember not very long into our occupation of that building, where we had a service with well over 320 some people in that sanctuary, absolutely jammed. And we realized we're going to have to go back to doing 2 services, which we did, and turned out to be beautiful. It certainly was the home for the harvest. And that's what we build it as, that, you know, there's a harvest here and we need a home for it. And boy, there were any number of baptism services and child dedication services where that stage was filled with people. It took the whole service just to get through him. And we realized as we're doing that look what God is doing.
Yes.
This was a home for the harvest. So we're in our new building, and one of the really cool things that happened, as we alluded to before, was all the young people that jumped on board and said, I want to be into ministry. Well, by several years into this building project, I mean, that we're in our new building, I should say, there's a lot going on. And there's a lot of people lined up ready to minister, more than we could use, really, or even that could even have a fair shot at things. So we had prayed forever about, God, where else would you want us to reach out to? And we thought about different cities. And it was Rayanne that came up in a staff meeting. She said, what about Reedsburg? Why not start something there? And all of us looked at her and said, yes. And it was like God's answer to what we were hoping for. So we decided to open a campus in Reedsburg. And, you know, kind of classic to us, it was all by faith. We didn't have money. We didn't have money set aside. We didn't have a bunch of resources. We didn't have equipment. We didn't have a place to meet, but we did have people. And at that point, Ken and Jess Cahart, wonderful people, had been a part of us volunteering, serving, helping, growing, had moved back to Wisconsin. They grew up here, but moved back here from a stint in ministry in Texas, where they had really gotten some ministry experience, and they were eager to serve. And we just really felt like, Ken, how about Reedsburg? And he said, I'll do it. And so we launched our first service in Reedsburg, and it was in the Cal Center, which was a beautiful place to meet, bigger than we needed. So we moved out of there to the lunchroom of the Cal Center. And then we ended up moving to the basement of an accounting building into the present building where we are. And just in the last couple of years, so much growth. We're regularly now, there's over 200 people a week in there.
Yeah,
and that building
2 services
jammed,
now.
2 services.
Yeah.
Ken and Jess, all the other staff members and leaders are doing a great job there. And we just think of, God has plans to reach rural Wisconsin with the gospel. It isn't just all about big cities and big things. It's about hardworking, committed, sacrificing leaders who are willing to serve. And now they're looking forward to their own new building.
Yeah.
And they're in the middle of preparing for their home for harvest. And it's going to be
exciting.
It's going to be an exciting time for them.
So cool.
So in Mauston, as these stories were unfolding, the Home for the Harvest, well, a big part of the harvest were families. I think I mentioned that we did 72 weddings in a span of 5 years in the church. Well, of course, those weddings make families, and families have children, and we had children.
We had lots of them.
We didn't have enough room for them. Everywhere we looked on a Sunday morning, there were kids and babies, and it was clogged, filled. It wasn't chaotic, but it was jammed. And it was very limiting in terms of what we could do. And we realized that, we really need a new building. And of course, by this time, I had been a part of leading 3 or 4, if you count minor additions, building projects, and never did want to be a building project leader. But so we're doing it. And these people are like, hey, we need to build a kids wing. And I'm thinking, okay, great. Well, that'll be for the next generation. But it wasn't. It was needed right now. So we got together, we put together a building team, which included our trustees and a number of other trusted leaders. And we got together and we talked about it. And I was thinking, we're going to go to our trustees and our building team, and they're going to go, no way.
Now.
So we went there and we talked about it. We didn't even finish talking about it. And our leaders were like, yes, let's do it. I'm thinking, wait, you know what you're doing? And then it was Craig, one of our trusted leaders, Craig Baseman, that stood up and said, I have a question. I thought, okay, here goes. And he goes, please, can we build it big enough so it's not immediately filled the minute we finish it? He said, what would we build if we had no financial concerns whatsoever? And I thought, we do have financial concerns. But we put the thing together. We prayed, we talked, everyone shared their thoughts. Everyone agreed. Let's do it. And I remember that meeting because I was surprised by their response. And they were, let's do it. And so when we prayed, you could feel the Holy Spirit just in the room with a unifying effect. It was like this divine hush. Nobody wanted to say anything. And we finally left and said, we're going to do this. And people were crying, and it was beautiful. And I left and thought, wow, what a God moment. And I went home, went to bed feeling great. About 2 a.m, I woke up. I don't know why, but I did. And I woke up and I sat up in bed and I felt this fear, like, what have you done? You just committed to a giant financial project and you're barely making it now? And I felt this fear. And again, it was a moment the Holy Spirit helped me to see. And I heard these things in my heart saying, if you want to be afraid of what will happen if you don't build it. And I realize now, looking back, we would not have the people or be the church we are if we hadn't stepped forward.
So way back at the beginning of our church, we hadn't been in church very long. We thought we tossed around the idea of what if someday we had a daycare, but it took a lot of years for it to become fruition. But
we didn't have the space or the personnel.
No, we didn't. But it was just something we thought it would be really cool to have daycare in our church
to serve
for
our
an outreach.
community.
For their community.
So that was way back when we first built our very first building. And then we even tried, we visited a few church daycares and we talked to some of our own people that we thought maybe could lead it. And it just didn't work because we didn't have space. And that was the first step. And we just kind of left it there for all those years. And then one day Well, that children's wing or youth wing was going up. It was the outside was finished, but it wasn't finished inside. It was like 30 below that morning, and I went out there to pray one morning in the cold, and I'm walking through that freezing cold area, and I felt like God just really witnessed in my heart, this building is not just for you, it's for the whole community. I want you to reach out to the families of this community and open a child care center. And from there, this time we did have personnel that could do it. And we went and talked with Lori, Katie, and Carrie. And all of them had their own field of expertise and experience. And we said, we really think we need to have an outreach to our community for childcare. And they all said, we'll be happy to do it. We'll put it together. And I thought, a few weeks and they'll throw something together.
It's a lot of work for them.
They work for months.
Yes.
Many of it volunteer hours, and poured their lives into it. And it was beautifully put together and is today.
Yeah. I think for us, it was a calling for us to do it as a ministry to these families. Because the programming that Katie and Carrie have there is amazing. It's not just like we're watching your kids, but they have programs. They learn about Jesus, and they teach them life lessons, and they're cared for so beautifully. If you ever walked in there and watched what they're doing, it is beautiful.
And what I see when I walk in there is not just, yes, all those things are true, but I sort of look down and I think, what does God see? People build buildings and we call it a church. And then all week long, it just sits there. And then Sunday morning, a few hours, we're in there. And I look at that building is filled with little children all day, every day, getting loved and cared for and prayed for. And it's reaching our community.
Yeah.
So what is God doing in us as we prepare to retire? It's really hard to tell. I feel like it's kind of like lost and found. I feel like there are things we're losing and things we're finding. I don't want to just hold on to things that I do. I want to be prepared for heaven. I want to be able to do things that I didn't have time to do, but are really important to God, to really help the poor and needy, and to personally be involved in underprivileged people and just serving and not feeling like I have to manage. I feel like I'm finding parts of me that were lost because of the busyness of ministry. We don't really know, but we know that the time was right. And I feel like this was our season. And I feel like sometimes ministers just work until the very end, and then, surprise, we land in heaven. I'd like to prepare for heaven by loving the least of these and those whom unlikely would be seen as Jesus in disguise.
Yes.
I want to help those people, and I want to get ready for heaven. Plus, we've got a bunch of kids and grandkids that we're really looking forward to being more of a part of their life because we have time. Probably you started this earlier than me, giving away ministries that you did, and I know it was a little hard for you. And I know one Sunday you were in the back of church, and I wasn't preaching, you weren't singing, we were doing nothing, we were just there. Church was filled. I believe Aaron was preaching. It was a beautiful experience.
Yeah, I just saw the beauty of the whole church, how it was running, and the younger people taking it over, and we're not part of it. And it was a happy, sad moment for me, thinking, oh my gosh, this is amazing. But then thinking, God, what do you have for me next? Like, does this mean I'm done? Does this mean like there's nothing left for me to do? And then as you and I were talking, we still both have the passion to help people and to minister to people. And yes, we'll have some fun in our retirement, but we're never going to lose that part of our heart. But I'm hoping that God will still help us to do things like that.
I'm sure He will. I remember that Sunday because it was really important, and I felt bad for you for feeling bad. And then I realized, well, my day's coming. We're going to hand this all off. And so I said, hey, come here. And we walked out of the church and walked up into the balcony. And I was watching the worship ending and the preaching begin. And whatever reason, that Sunday was just jammed with people. And there were young people there. People gave their life to Christ. It was a beautiful service. And I remember looking at you, and this really is a great way to think about this journey. Looking at you, and I said, all those years ago, when we started this church, and we said, God, we really want, and we had all these dreams. I looked at you and I said to you and me, what do you think? What did we want when we started? What did we want? Did we want a church that's needing us for the rest of our lives and collapses when we're done? I said no. We wanted a church that could reach generations long after we went to heaven. And we looked down at that congregation worshiping and the people preaching and the people serving, realizing that this is going on. This isn't dependent upon us, and it never was, really. It's God's church, and it's going to go on.
Yes.
And as we look forward to retiring, we're looking forward to one day getting to heaven and looking down and going, way to go, guys. Which leads us to today, 40 years from then. And I have an announcement for you today. On the last Sunday of September of this year, I will be formally stepping aside and retiring my role as the senior pastor of Faith Christian Church.